This bill would require judges adjudicating such disputes over transgender identifying children to favor the parent who affirms the child's preferred identity.
Nearly 3 years later, Jeanette can't even visit with the daughter she loves. She lives less than 10 minutes away, but can only communicate with Sophia by U.S. mail. All because she insists that Sophia is a girl.
Why do you care, they say? It doesn't even affect you. Let people live their best life. These are sentiments that are said to people who oppose gender ideology. Welcome to Bold Reflections. My name is Jasmine. Today, I want you to be aware of a new California bill by Senator Scott Wiener and Lori Wilson of the Democrat Party. So if you are still voting Democrat, why? I don't understand why, especially if you're Christian. Under California's Assembly Bill 957, a parent could lose custody for not affirming or agreeing to a child's claims about gender identity. Co-authored by Senator Scott Wiener, and we're going to get into Senator Scott Wiener and the craziness that this man supports. This bill would require judges adjudicating such disputes over transgender identifying children to favor the parent who affirms the child's preferred identity. As if divorces don't get ugly enough. Now, we're going to favor the one who says, yeah, you can be whatever you think you want to be. And we will go down the medical path to achieving that delusion. If you are a sane and rational parent, you got no say. No say. Now here's where it gets into Senator Wiener. Apparently, Senator Wiener is not satisfied eroding parental rights with his bill to allow children as young as 12 to take the COVID vaccine without parental consent, or his bill relaxing the penalties for having non-forcible sodomy, oral copulation, and sexual penetration with a minor, relaxing the penalty, or his bill to remove the felony penalty for knowingly exposing another person to HIV. So this is the same. This is the one and the same guy who is supporting this bill. What does that say about this bill?
So this particular bill adds the very important factor that affirming a child's gender identity is in their best interest, which is what your question is about. Why does it actually say that in an affirmative way? And it really is because if you have a 7-year-old who's talking about having a potential to say, being able to articulate that they believe that they are not the same gender as they are biologically, then it should be affirmed. And through care, it should be determined. And that's what we did with our own child. And that would give the ability for a parent who wasn't sure to affirm and get their child the care that they need to make that, so they can begin to articulate that determination. But by saying and rejecting it in wholesale, then you're essentially rejecting your child. And that is not in the best interests of a child. We should be affirming our children in every possible way and getting them whatever appropriate care they need, whether it's based on their gender, whether it's based on how their studies are in school. It doesn't matter. Our children should be affirmed. And this is saying that you have to include gender affirmation as a part of that.
So, essentially, if a child determines, because they can articulate it with words, that they don't feel like a boy or a girl, even though they haven't even gone through puberty yet, because they can articulate it, so then it should be affirmed. And if you're not willing to affirm them, you are rejecting your child. You don't love your child, and their best interest is not being considered. And therefore, we will not consider you able to have your child, able to have full custody or visitation of your child. This is a sickness. By the way, puberty blockers, which is what they would as young as 7, if you're talking about medical care, right? As she described, care, which means what? Medical care. Puberty blockers that are given to convicted pedophiles in prison to chemically castrate them. That's what you want the kids to take? That's what we must affirm? I'm glad I don't live in California, but if you think that California is where this is going to stop. Have you looked at your president lately? He is very much in favor of trans kids. So, I don't know. It's a little weird. I don't know. Doesn't seem like it's going to be isolated to California. And even if it is, it's still worthy of speaking out against because it exposes where these people's heads and hearts lie in debauchery, in darkness, in depravity. And if you consider yourself a Christian like I do, it is imperative to care about this. It is imperative to speak out. It is a clash of worldviews. Now, this bill is a thing, but this has been happening for a while. And one such case is the case of Jeanette Cooper. So Matt Walsh actually covered a story of a parent that was going through this exact situation.
Now, Jeanette Cooper is a 44-year-old woman whose tragic tale was highlighted this week by journalist Kelsey Bolar of the Independent Women's Forum. On the IWF website, she tells a story of how Cooper, who's the mother to a 12-year-old girl, also, by the way, a lifelong progressive Democrat, by no means is this like a conservative with an axe to grind ideologically. It's a progressive Democrat woman and mother, lost custody of her daughter because, unlike her ex-husband, she wouldn't affirm her daughter's deluded idea that she was really a boy. Reading now from the article says, Jeanette Cooper never imagined she'd lose custody of her child. The 44-year-old lifelong educator always considered herself a loving and responsible mother to her daughter, Sophia. But when, at age 12, Sophia suddenly claimed to be transgender, Jeanette was skeptical. Sophia had never exhibited signs of gender dysphoria. In fact, Sophia exhibited many more traditionally feminine behaviors and preferences than Jeanette ever had. To Jeanette, it didn't make sense. But Sophia insisted not only that she was trans, but that she was unsafe around Jeanette. What followed was an almost Kafkaesque series of court proceedings and therapy sessions in which Jeanette's ex-husband, lawyers, therapists, and other individuals and institutions supposedly concerned with Sophia's best interests worked to erode Jeanette's most basic parenting rights. Nearly 3 years later, Jeanette can't even visit with the daughter she loves. She lives less than 10 minutes away, but can only communicate with Sophia by U.S. mail. All because she insists that Sophia is a girl. Now, from here, we're told the whole story about how Jeanette and her husband divorced in 2015. Now, at first, Jeanette was, as very often happens, was awarded almost full custody of her daughter. She had her daughter 6 days a week. But then one day at the age of 12, her daughter goes for a visit to her father's, who, by the way, had recently remarried and was now married to a psychotherapist. And she goes for the visit and never returns. The girl announced out of nowhere that she was trans and couldn't live with her mother anymore because her mother's disagreement with trans ideology made her feel unsafe. Now, Jeanette suspects, and with good reason, I'm guessing, that the girl's psychotherapist stepmom has a lot to do with her daughter's discovery of her male identity. There's probably something to that theory, but also I'm sure she picked it up from school. She picked it up from social media. We've heard this story over and over and over again. So many parents with this exact story. Most of the time, they're adolescent girls, but not always. Girls perfectly fine, no signs of gender dysphoria at all, no indication ever at any point in her life that she was confused about her gender, and then one day out of nowhere, just like that, she says, oh, I'm trans. Now, in this case, the court ordered an investigation of Jeanette to find out if her daughter was actually unsafe around her, because that's what the daughter said. So they ordered an investigation, took 7 months investigating this mother, and found no abuse, no neglect. But they did decide that Jeanette needs to, quote, further her understanding of and support of the minor child as relates to the minor child's gender dysphoria. Translation, she's not on board with the trans agenda, and so she can't see her daughter anymore. And she hasn't. She hasn't had any physical contact with her child for the past 3 years. Now, eventually, and this is where it gets even more sinister, if that's possible. Eventually, she was forced to negotiate a deal, right? And here was the deal that she was given by the court. In exchange for giving up any legal right to see her daughter again, she was assured in writing that her daughter would not undergo a medical transition without her permission or a court order. Okay, so this is the deal with the devil that parents are now forced to make. Give up your rights to your daughter, or we will mutilate her. We will cut her to pieces if you don't give up your rights to her. Imagine being a parent and having to face that decision. And so she says, well, I guess I have no choice. I'm never going to see my daughter again. But at least she won't be mutilated. But the thing is, part of the deal here is that even if you agree with a court order, we can still mutilate her. And we know how easy it is to get the court order. Jeanette points out correctly that murderers in prison now have more communication and contact with their children than she does. That kind of makes sense in a certain way, because as far as the system is concerned, she's worse than a murderer. I mean, she's a transphobe.
So this is
That's
happening.
the cardinal sin.
And it doesn't matter what your politics are. It matters whether you bend the knee. In an interview, that mother actually expresses, I'm going to actually just put it up on the screen. We're not going to play it, but on the screen you can see Allie Beth Stuckey interviewed this mother. I'll link it in the description. She essentially expresses, you're not, as a parent, you're not allowed to have questions. You're not allowed to be skeptical. All I want to know is what is going on with my kid. I can't even ask questions. And this is why this bill from California is so horrific. It's absolutely horrific. With that being said, Christians, it's imperative that you recognize the time and age that we live in. Whether or not you think that your family is immune to this because of their upbringing, maybe you homeschooled them, maybe you grew them up in church, whatever, we must pay attention. We are called to love people. And if you think that your child is somehow immune from this culture, you're wrong. These are conversations we need to have daily. These are conversations that need to be imprinted on their soul, and they need to know why this ideology is wrong. Not just that it's wrong, but why. All right, guys, that is all I have for you today. Thank you so much for joining me. And as always, God bless.